I see a few folks just coming in now to join, so we'll give you all a few minutes. Congressman Neguse and Congressman Auchincloss are headed back from the House floor now, so we appreciate your patience for the rescheduled call, and they will be joining us shortly. We'll hear from each of our speakers, and then we'll also have an opportunity for question and answer, so feel free to raise your hand or hop in the Q&A box at that point, and we're happy to take questions at the end. But we will kick off our program by hearing from Christian Gardner-Wood with Boulder District Attorney's Office, and I will turn it over to him for a few remarks.
Thank you so much, Sally. I appreciate it. Good afternoon,
Recording
everybody.
in progress.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christian Gardner-Wood. I'm a Chief Deputy District Attorney for the Boulder County DA's office in Colorado. On behalf of District Attorney Michael Doherty in the Boulder DA's office, we want to applaud Congressman Neguse's leadership and his continued commitment to reduce gun violence in our country. The Safe Communities Act is a very strong step in reducing gun violence. By preventing gun purchases for those with violent criminal convictions in the past 5 years, this bill targets those individuals who have just recently proven to be a real danger to other people. They've shown themselves to be an immediate danger to the community and to others. District Attorney Doherty and the Boulder DA's office have been working on the issue of gun violence and safe gun storage since 2018. The Safe Communities Act is consistent with those efforts, and we need action on gun violence prevention, and this bill represents real concrete action on that front. We were happy to have consulted on the bill during its drafting and are now happy to strongly support the bill as it has been introduced, and thank both Congressman Neguse and Auchincloss for their continued leadership and their sponsorship of this bill.
Thanks so much. And we'll now kick it over to Lindsay Nichols from Giffords to share a few words as well.
Thank you, Sally. And I wanted to say thank you to Congressman Neguse and Auchincloss for introducing this bill and truly being leaders on this issue. And thank you all to the panelists in advance. I'm humbled and honored really to speak alongside you. I'm the Federal Policy Director with the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. We at Giffords strongly support this effort. Since the pandemic began, homicide rates across the country have spiked. Data from the CDC indicates that the homicide rate rose 30% between 2019 and 2020 and continued to increase. We know that communities and families are suffering as victims of this historic rise in violence. And this violence also has a disproportionate impact on Black and Brown communities. That truth is unfair and unjust, and these crimes are not inevitable. In order to stop this horrifying trend, we can use the background check system that we have and the criminal history records that we have to prevent guns from being used in further crimes. Because of a legal loophole, current law allowed the Boulder shooter, someone who had been convicted of a violent crime, to pass a background check and purchase the gun he then used to kill 10 people in a supermarket. That loophole continues to allow gun purchasers by people who have been charged with and convicted of violent crimes classified as misdemeanors, even though states vary dramatically in the way they classify crimes. For a person convicted of a violent crime to pass a background check and buy a gun is dangerous. It is too great a risk to public safety and it costs lives. Social science research says that someone convicted of a violent misdemeanor is 8 times more likely to commit another violent crime. This bill is modest. Like the law that Colorado enacted last year, it has clear parameters. It only applies to future convictions and only during the 5-year period following the conviction. And it has been carefully drafted specifically with the background check process in mind. The background check system continues to be the key to reducing gun violence by reducing gun access in proper situations. Strengthening the criteria for who can and cannot pass a background check makes sense. That's why I'm so grateful that this bill, the SAFE Act, is being introduced, and I hope members of Congress quickly move it forward. Thank you.
Great, and we have the congressman now, so we'll kick it off to him.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us on today's call. And I want to apologize in advance for the scheduling difficulties. As you may know, we have a series of votes that have been called throughout this afternoon. And so unfortunately, we had to delay a bit, but I very much appreciate your indulgence and everyone's ability to be nimble as we tried our best to schedule this important press conference. As we join together today to unveil critical common sense legislation, as you've heard, to protect our communities and to save lives. 7 months ago, we experienced an unfathomable tragedy in our community in Boulder, Colorado. On a Monday afternoon on March 22nd, 10 lives were lost at our local King Soopers as a suspect opened fire on customers and employees. Coloradans who came to buy eggs, to pick up groceries, some who dropped by the store to get their COVID-19 vaccine, saw their day take a gut-wrenching turn in a matter of minutes. 10 lives were taken too soon. Daughters, sons, neighbors, spouses, coworkers, community members, each of whom left a profound impact on our community. I want to start by recognizing the family members that we have on today's call. We are so grateful that you are able to join us. We're honored by your presence. Jen, Suzanne Fountain's sister, and her husband, Ed, are both joining us today to share more about Suzanne. Phil, Suzanne's brother, is also here listening in. Also listening on the call is Ellen, Kevin Mahoney's widow in Boulder. Margie, Terry Leiker's mother, also wanted to join, but she was unable to attend. She submitted a written statement that we'll share around and that I hope everyone will take a moment to read. Our community is still very much healing. For each of the victims' families, we continue to hold you in our thoughts and our prayers. We grieve with you, and while no law can ultimately bring back the 10 lives lost on that Monday afternoon, it's our hope that the action that we're taking today will prove critical in stopping future events of violence. Today, as you've heard, we're unveiling the End Gun Violence Act, critical common sense legislation that is pretty simple. It would prohibit the sale of firearms and ammunition to any person who has been convicted of a violent misdemeanor crime for 5 years. The gunman, as we've heard in the March 22nd mass shooting, had a well-documented history of violence. In 2018, the shooter was convicted of third-degree assault, a violent misdemeanor. Despite that conviction, the shooter was legally eligible under state and federal law to buy a gun. We believe if the End Gun Violence Act had been the law of the land in March, that he would have been prevented from purchasing that firearm, which is exactly why it is absolutely crucial that we put the measure into place to prevent future tragedies. Ensuring that firearms cannot be sold to violent individuals is crucial to preventing gun violence and to saving lives. I'm honored to be joined today by Congressman Jake Auchincloss, a friend of mine and a colleague from the state of Massachusetts, our partner on this bill, as well as Representative Robin Kelly of the state of Illinois. We're proud that we've also earned the support of many of my colleagues on the House Judiciary Committee and look forward to getting this bill across the finish line. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Sally. I know Representative Auchincloss intends to join us. He's on the House floor voting as we speak, so I believe he'll be joining us shortly. But for now, I'll turn it back to Sally Tucker. And again, a word of gratitude to the District Attorney's Office, to Giffords, but most importantly, to the family members. I just am in awe of their ability to convert such deep grief and such anguish into action. And I'm just very grateful to each and every one of them. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Sally.
And I think we are still waiting on Congressman Auchincloss. So Jen and Ed would like to turn it to you now for whatever you'd like to say.
Good afternoon. I'm Jen McCaskill. This is my husband, Ed. Susie was my sister, Ed's sister-in-law. On March 22nd, 2021, after getting her hair done, my sister popped into the King Super grocery store to pick up a couple of items in Boulder, Colorado, before she made her way home. In the middle of aisle 10, Susie was murdered, shot 3 times, killed instantly. She was tragically taken, leaving a son without a mother and parents without a child. Susie was a healthy 59-year-old woman whose life was stolen from her. She was a mother, daughter, sister, aunt, and most importantly, a friend. Susie was an actress. She was an insurance agent. She was a gardener. She loved the outdoors. Susie believed in a meaningful life. She always held true to her convictions. She was charitable, and Susie was genuine. A beacon was put out that day. It was absolutely senseless. She was grocery shopping. We all go grocery shopping. Why is it that we can't be safe in the grocery store? Last night, I was talking to her son, Nathaniel, and he said to me, Aunt Jen, she was my rock. Losing her has been life-shattering. She was brightness in a dark world. We as a family hope and pray that this bill will be a step in the right direction, preventing these senseless acts of violence. If a law like this had been in place 8 months ago, 10 people would not have been murdered that day. We know we'll never get Susie back, but we don't want anyone else to go through what we, as her family and friends, are going through right now, and what the other families are going through right now. We as a society need to make the decision that we don't need to live like this. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our story, and thank you for doing this.
I'd like to now turn it to Congressman Auchincloss to give his remarks.
I want to thank my friend and colleague, Representative Neguse, for his leadership on this important bill. And I want also to extend to the McCaskill family my appreciation for your courage and your commitment in speaking on this painful subject and continuing to keep this story and this issue front and center for all of us. I was, for 4 years, a Marine officer, and when you train as a Marine officer, you spend 3 months sleeping, eating, patrolling, unloading, reloading, cleaning your assault weapon before you're even allowed to put a round in the chamber. It is a privilege to get to handle live ammunition that you have to earn with 3 months of significant training. After that point, we then keep those weapons behind 3 locked doors at all times. 3 separate keys that 3 separate individuals have control over, because that is the level of respect that the Marine Corps has for the deadly power of a weapon of war. And the idea that in the civilian world, somebody not only who lacks that kind of training, somebody not only lacks that appreciation for the power of weapons is able to access them, but someone who actually has a record that would suggest that they are a threat to others should be able to access these weapons is unconscionable. It is, as Jen McCaskill said, it's a choice that we make as a society. It's the wrong choice. It's a choice that costs lives. We need to stop making it. We need to pass this law. We need to pass universal background checks. We need to pass red flag laws. And we need to stop making a choice that costs innocent lives. And I know that I speak for Joe when I say that we're going to continue working on this issue in Congress.
All right, again, if folks have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A portion mute. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. We'll just give it just another minute if folks want to write in the chat, or they can raise their hand.
I'm seeing a question in the Q&A box, Sally, from a couple people. Do you want me to respond to those?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to.
They're related, the two questions. One is about what kind of bipartisan support is anticipated, and the other is what has to happen before this is officially passed. I think we need to be candid and directive about this. We got to abolish the filibuster for gun violence legislation is what's going to take to get this and other common sense gun safety legislation passed. I welcome bipartisan support. I will certainly work for bipartisan support for this bill. We may get some in the House, but the Senate has showed over and over again that when gun violence bills, even those supported by 80, 90%, not just of Americans, but of gun owners, come to the floor, that they are willing to not even give that bill a debate. Not even allow that bill to go on the floor and get a debate amongst the senators, but rather to deprive it even of a hearing on the floor. After more than a decade of that kind of intransigence, I believe I owe it to my constituents and to Americans broadly just to speak very directly. We need to abolish the filibuster for gun violence legislation, and then we need to pass this bill and its complement bills that are going to enact common sense legislation that other countries and states within this federation have demonstrated save lives.
All right, it looks like we have no more questions. Congressman Ashcroft, I don't know if you have a few remarks to close, and I think that Congressman Neguse will also hopefully hop back on to give a few closing remarks as well.
Just briefly, I just want to again extend my appreciation to my constituents, McCaskill family, for your courage in speaking on this issue. You are the most powerful messengers on this issue. It is a tragedy that there needs to be messengers on this issue. It's a tragedy that we have to create through these kinds of atrocities, messengers on this issue, but you are the most powerful ones to speak out on it. So continuing to do so carries this fight forward.
All right, and now we will have just some closing audio remarks from Congressman Neguse, and then we will wrap up.
Well, again, I want to say thank you to Giffords. Thank you to the district attorney's office, and thank you to the victims' families. We just simply cannot express to you our gratitude for your willingness to be a part of today's event and to really be the driving force behind our efforts to try to address the gun violence epidemic in our country and enact meaningful and common sense gun violence prevention legislation. We intend to give this piece of legislation our all, to do everything we can to get it across the finish line. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Sally Tucker. And again, thank you everyone for attending today.
Thank you all so much. And if there are any follow-up questions, feel free to email me as well. And we very much appreciate you all for joining the call. Thank you so much.